What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with another Edge of Fate video. And in this one we're going to talk about Kepler, world tiers, and the general sort of progression system leading us up to being able to obtain higher tiers of gear from the destination. So we'll talk about some quests that unlock after the main campaign, a hidden additional variant of the armor set from Kepler, which has different set bonuses. Plus we'll talk about how to work towards getting higher tiers of gear, all the way up to tier 5, which obviously for the majority of players isn't going to be obtainable immediately or very soon, but we can still break down how this loot system really works on Kepler, and some things to be aware of to sort of get you to a place where you can start earning the higher tier rewards that the destination has to offer. So we're going to do a general breakdown, guys. If you would find it useful, a rating really does help me on the channel. Otherwise though, now let's get into it. The first thing I would say is that a lot of the improved rewards from Kepler after the sort of initial campaign run, if we're talking about gear that is equivalent to our very best gear, adept weapons from before Edge of Fate, or perhaps even slightly better, most of that stuff is going to require 150 to 200 power before we really start earning stuff that's actually better than what we had before this expansion. Obviously there are loads of ways to earn that power through the portal, even repeat runs of the campaign on alternate characters, because power is now account wide. There'll certainly be a bit of a grind before we start getting access to the better tiers of rewards. But speaking about Kepler loot, there are a handful of different things to keep in mind. Firstly, there's the post-campaign activity, which is Sieve. This is the timed one that pops up every couple of hours. But by running this, and especially as we get higher power levels and can get further through the activity, we can farm rerolls of exotic armor after dropping it initially in the campaign. Plus you can get drops of weapons and armor from this mode. So if you're already running things on Kepler, if you see that event pop up, it's probably worth spending a bit of time in there. Not least because weapon and armor focusing on Kepler actually appears to be very strong. So of course we do this at the Altar of Relativity, and where focusing in something like Heresy felt like a small boost to drop rates of certain things, on Kepler, when you focus a weapon, it seems that we get it over and over pretty consistently. And that's going to pair up really nicely with higher world tiers effectively, as you can target farm higher tier loot, probably more efficiently than what we've seen in the past. So keep in mind the focusing element. Otherwise, after the main campaign, we get access to world tiers. Now, the first one is Fabled. This has a power cap of 150, and I think enemies in here are going to be at 180 power. When you select the Fabled World difficulty and head to the Altar of Relativity, there'll be a Fabled quest which has us clear out the 4 sections of Kepler again on a higher difficulty, and that will award a Matter Spark upgrade. But after its completion, we can purchase a fixed roll tier 4, a Gape Hand Cannon. On top of that, another tier 4 version of the Ulterior Observation will be available in this list, but it requires the completion of the 3rd iteration catalyst and all of the secret treasure triumphs for Kepler, so that will take a little while. But additionally, when on Fabled difficulty, the 2 featured weekly missions for Kepler, as well as the time-lapse mission, will award tier 2 drops of Kepler weapons. And if you focus for a specific weapon or armor piece, it's going to be a very good way to get a few drops of that specific item at the correct tier. Next up though, on Mythic difficulty, there is a power cap of 200 power, and enemies are at around 250 power. Again, when you select Mythic World tier, when you visit the altar, there'll be an Explore Kepler Mythic quest, which has the same requirements as the Fabled quest, but obviously it's going to be harder, and as we can see, there's a Matter Spark upgrade. But if we complete the entire Mythic quest, we unlock a new Kepler armor variant. And this is the Aeon adapter sets of gear. They actually come with different set bonuses. So the 2-piece bonus is Force Absorption, and final blows with any rocket or grenade launcher temporarily decrease incoming area of effect damage. And the 4-piece bonus is Reactive Shock, and when Force Absorption is active, taking melee damage causes you to emit a disorienting burst once. So that's the alternate set bonus for this gear. It also has a different base shader and glow color on it, so it's definitely something that will be good to go after as we approach appropriate power levels, really. But additionally, if you complete the Mythic quest, we can purchase a tier 5 version of the Principial Shotgun from the Pursuits, and the other tier 5 weapon, which is Give Us Blessing, can be purchased if we complete all 33 triumphs in the Edge of Fate title. So those are some very deterministic drops of higher tier loot on Kepler. Outside of the quest though, Kepler's base maximum tier for loot, even on Mythic, will actually be tier 3. However, in order to freely farm tier 4 or 5 gear, we'll need to make some power progress to get bonuses at the altar. So as you can see here, when we reach power level 350, we get a bonus unlock which permanently increases gear tier for all Kepler drops by +1. And beyond that, at 450 power, a bonus allows all gear to drop with plus tier 2. So to freely farm tier 5 Kepler loot, basically, we will have to be at power 450, make sure we got that vendor bonus unlocked. And then if we run Fabled World tier content, whether it's exploration, opening chests and doing puzzles, completing weekly missions, the reward tip will indicate that we'll get tier 3 rewards, but if you got the bonus unlocked, those tier 3s will automatically become tier 5s. Another aspect of Kepler loot is the focus decoding, and in this menu, we can focus Kepler engrams of specific daily purchases using destination materials like fated ciphers, and we find these by playing Kepler content in general, but then there are specific region materials, and each day the specific destination material and boosted region will change. So day 1 was the Gorge, which is where we find phase glass refraction, and if we farm the Gorge area on the day it's featured, we'll get bonus materials, which can be spent to do focused decoding. On top of that, if you're looking for tier 3, 4, or 5 gear, there are engrams here which we can purchase. Access to some engrams require completion of specific triumphs and of course the associated currencies. But later in our Kepler progression, there'll be a direct focus decoding option for tier 5 engrams. They show up in the database, but they're not in the game just yet, so it will be a thing, but there'll be a few prerequisites to actually wrap up first. And so Kepler is a mixture of world exploration, completing mythic and fabled world quests, and then beyond that, farming destination materials, including the daily focus, and then ultimately unlocking the tier boosts by achieving high power levels. Like I said, to get to those power levels, firstly, now that power is account-wide, if you run the campaign on a second character, you'll basically continue where you left off in terms of power. So you'll get some pretty big boosts on that second run through. Otherwise, I would focus on the daily bonus portal activities, as those are going to be the ones that give you the best sort of outcome in terms of power progression. You can also see the projected rewards in the portal to get an idea of which activities are going to be most beneficial to actually power up. And in a weird kind of way, if getting high tier Kepler loot is actually your main focus, really, it's worth kind of running the main campaign, clearing out the map, getting whatever power level you can from that, then focusing on the portal until you're around 150 or 200 power. At that point, it's worth going back to Kepler and completing the mythic or fabled quests if you can, as they're going to give good power and higher tiers of loot. But once those are done, again, I'd sort of go back to the portal and work your way into the seasonal power band, and then probably focus on playing Kepler content and farming Kepler loot once you're at 350 to 450 power, as otherwise you're basically earning a bunch of items that you're going to go ahead and replace with higher tier loot later on, right? So that's kind of the efficient way to do it. Obviously, you can approach it any way you like, but if you've been curious as to how I'll actually get these higher tiers of loot on Kepler, and how maybe to plan to get into that content as we get through the power progression bands, then I hope the video today has been helpful. So if you have any tips for power leveling, feel free to drop them in the comments section. Any things that you found are especially helpful, I'm sure we can help each other out with that. If you found today's video useful though, a rating really does help me on the channel. But otherwise, thank you for tuning in today, and I will catch you guys very soon.